Good evening, dear participants. Good evening, Dr. Shivandu. Warm greetings to all researchers, scientists, professors, and students. On behalf of ICWR, I welcome you all. International Consortium of Water Researchers, ICWR, is a non-profit organ consortium, operates with an objective to connect water-based researchers and scientists all over the world. It is promoted and supported by international and national advisory committee members of various research and educational institutions across the globe. ICWR operates with interest towards enriching knowledge at 4 different stages as water fellows, water experts, young professionals, and student members based on your years of experience in water-based research or environmental-based research. And ICWR does this through organizing webinar series, training and workshops on water-based modeling, and annual virtual conferences. We also further our objective by operating effectively among the water-based research aspirants at all levels. So far, ICWR have organized 6 webinars through international and national experts like Professor Eric from University of Paris, Professor Ariel Tay from University of Sydney, and Professor Esta van Herden from South Africa, Professor Frederick from Cranfield University, UK, Professor Shankar Chakma from IICR Bhopal, and Professor Rajesh Banu from Central University of Tamil Nadu. With this short introduction about ICWR and its related activities, I would like to introduce Dr. Shivandu Ranjan from University of Johannesburg for the 7th webinar of ICWR. He is going to give his webinar on translational nanotechnology for environment, health, and safety. To introduce with, he is having 10 years of experience in research, and at a very young age, he has published around 80 plus research articles and various books and book chapters in association with Springer and Elsevier, as well as Taylor and Francis and ACS and all. He is having citations around 1,700 plus citations with H index of 21. He is having a rich research experience as in various levels. As seen in, right now, he is as a senior research associate in the University of Johannesburg, and he is also serving as strategic head and research development in Ennoble IP Consultancy Private Limited, Noida, and visiting faculty on NIPER. And he is a scientist in DST Center for Policy Research, Lucknow. And he is, to his credit, he is having various research associates with the different universities across the globe. And I feel he'll be a right person to introduce the modern aspects of research to the young minds of the researchers as well as the scientists. And really, I'm waiting for your talk, Dr. Shivandu. Now the platform is yours.
Yeah. Thanks, Dr. Padmanabhan. I hope I'm audible. I'll first share my slide before.
Yeah, it is clear. Voice is clear. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. So I believe the slides are also visible to you guys. So today, the topic which has been assigned to me with the great team of Dr. Padmanabhan, and actually I congratulate Dr. Padmanabhan to take lead to establish this ICWR with this with his vision to for translational research in water mainly, because water obviously is a crisis and we need many things to be done to overcome it. And hope means I'll be talking about many things about nanomedicine and nanotoxicology, and few slides about water. On water I'll be talking about, although this is water research, but obviously my research is not in that. But still, congratulations, Dr. Padmanabhan. And so starting this presentation, yeah. So today's topic is translational nanotechnology for environment, health, and safety. Obviously, if we talk about translational nanotechnology, which means product oriented, if product is not there, processes are not there, it is not at all translational. And how this translational nanotechnology could be useful for environment, health, and what are the safety measures we should take? Because whenever we are fabricating any nanomaterial, synthesizing or engineering any new product or nanomaterial, then again the safety perspective matters a lot. It means the nanotoxicology or the risk assessment, risk management, and risk evaluation of nanomaterials. So these things are few of the concerns which we the researchers will not take. Means we may say that yeah, Eureka, we have achieved synthesizing this nanomaterial. But what is the life cycle of that material? We have never means we have least questioned about that. What will be the impact of that nanomaterials? How to discard those nanomaterials which we are using very frequently? So how we can imagine for the safer environment in this? So obviously we all know nanomaterial are toxic. So what is the life cycle? We have never analyzed it, and we have never asked the question, because everyone we are running in a race to give new product for different to solve different perspective. That's true, but sustainability should be never looked out. Means should be looked out. So coming to the topic, since Dr. Padmanabhan has given a detailed introduction about me, so I'll just skip this slide. Nanotechnology, as far as means, since I know the audience group is actually interdisciplinary, and the age also varies a lot, because I received few messages on Facebook and LinkedIn that many from the undergrad and postgrad have approached and they have registered and they're interested in this. So I'll keep this in a simple language to deliver this. Obviously, I'll be showing the results, but I'll keep the language as simple as possible so that it will be understandable. Nanotechnology, as the term nano means 10 to the power minus 9. So anything which is in the range of 10 to the power minus 9 nanometer can be called as nanomaterial. Fine. We have like Richard Feynman has given a very good statement, which I like them a lot. There's plenty of room at the bottom. So obviously there is plenty of room at the bottom. Bottom means the smaller particles. And since property changes greatly, we all know that silver in bulk form, it is conductive in nature, but silver in nano range, it is non-conductive in nature in terms of electricity and heat. So going smaller, going deeper, going to the bottom, the property of the material changes a lot, the physicochemical property, and that opens a plenty of room to research for, because if property changes, behavior will change, interaction will change with the biological ecosystem. So that opens up plenty of room. But again, being toxicologist, I'll say there are plenty of room for toxicology always. Okay, so there are plenty of rooms for toxicology at the bottom. If activity is there, toxicity also is there. So we will be discussing about those sustainability, and obviously it's very famous that nano is not new. Actually, it is we who started seeing it very recently. Once the electron microscope means our the physics domain has become rich to invent the electron microscope and other characterization techniques, and thus we started exploring the world, and then we came to know about nano. Quite possible, and many researchers, means few researchers are coming, that pico is also possible. So it is once we will be able to see the pico material, then we will be able to call it as pico material. So means Roman glass cup is very famous, and the coating of the Roman glass cup is actually of the nanomaterials. In Ayurveda, because I have, since being Indian, I have interest in Ayurvedic medicines. So in Ayurveda, I have gone through the protocol of synthesizing the Swarna Bhasma, Loha Bhasmas, and other herbal conjugated Bhasmas. And means that is another 1.5 hour talk, that how Ayurveda and nano are similar, but still I'll try to explain it. Whatever the Bhasma's preparation protocol in Ayurvedic system, Ayurvedic books, it has been mentioned. And if you will follow exactly, then if you'll characterize it, the size will be in nano range. Again, I was shocked to read, and I was shocked to see the means information that the Bhasma's conjugation with plant extract, it has been mentioned in our Ayurveda. So it is we who started exploring the nano in this era, just because of electron microscope and other characterization techniques. So nano means it has application in health, it has application in medical, food, industry. So one thing should be very clear about in our mind, that nano doesn't means heavy metal nanoparticles. Means silver nanoparticle, gold nanoparticle, any other nanoparticle, heavy metal nanoparticle It is not only that. It is nano emulsion as well. It is lipid nanoparticles as well. It is quantum dots. It is nanofibers. It is nano powders. So n number of types are there of nano. It is nano ceramics as well. So obviously we should open our mind. Once I'll be talking about nanomaterial, it is not always nanoparticle. Okay. So this why I'm clearing it, because many of the times I'll be talking about nano emulsion, many of the times I'll be talking about nanoparticles. So we should not get confused. And since this range of nanomaterials, right from ceramics, right from fibers, droplets, then emulsions and particles, range of nanomaterials are there. And at the lower size, the property gets changes. So application is varied. If you will consider food, nutraceutical delivery, food packaging, anti-pesticide, then improving the texture of the food. Nowadays, 3D bioprinting, again in that 3D food printing, actually, in 3D food printing, again, nanomaterial application can be seen. If it is biomedical, right from drug delivery to antimicrobial, then again in therapeutics, in even imaging technologies, so biomedical application also, it has range of application. Obviously, we will be talking more about environmental. We'll be talking more about toxicity, touching the domain of biomedical and food application, because like to connect the dots. Obviously, once we'll be understanding the application of nanomaterials, we will be able to will be able to judge the risk versus application, means the risk versus benefit. And then we can decide on our own that, okay, fine, whether we should use it or not. So nanomedicine. So anything in the nano range, if it is acting as medicine, it is curing, means the definition of medicine we all know. So if it is curing any disease, if it is boosting the health, then, and it is in nano range there, so it is nanomedicine. But I do consider nanoceutical, that is the nano-sized nutraceutical delivery, as well as nanopharmaceuticals, which is the nano-sized pharmaceutical delivery. What is that? That is the quote means in a simple way, either if we will encapsulate the active compound in nano droplets, that is again is a vehicle. These droplets are the vehicle for delivery. Okay. So encapsulating, or we can load the active compound over some particle, so this vehicle can take. So these are a few of the vehicles, nano vehicles we have engineered to deliver either nutraceutical or pharmaceutical. But considering this nanomedicine or nano nutraceutical or pharmaceutical delivery, it is highly interdisciplinary. How? Because nanomaterial synthesis itself is a multidisciplinary approach. It includes the knowledge of material science. It includes the knowledge of polymer technology. It includes the knowledge of pharmacology, biotechnology, and then medicine. So overall, we can see that nanomedicine itself is highly interdisciplinary. If we have least knowledge about materials, if we have least knowledge about characterization, if we have least knowledge about analytical techniques, that is again characterization of nanomaterials, characterization of medicine. If we have lesser knowledge of cell biology, if we have lesser knowledge of microbiology, so we can't work in the domain of nanomedicine. So if we are talking about nanomedicine itself, it has n number of multidisciplinary approaches. Then again, if we will include the nutraceutical delivery, then the concept of food comes. If we will include the environmental and agricultural delivery, then it has the broad perspective, and then toxicology. So now, nanomedicine types and delivery routes, that is, either we can make the nanoparticle and drug composite. Few examples I have given, a number of examples can be. Nanoparticle drug composite means if it is a nanomaterial, then we can conjugate the active compound over the particle. Okay, that is one of the example of nanoparticle drug composite. Drug encapsulated in nano emulsion. We all know what is emulsion because this is very basic. So obviously, in emulsion droplets, we can encapsulate any of the active ingredient. Okay, that can be nutraceutical, that can be pharmaceutical, but we can encapsulate it. Drug encapsulated nanospheres polymer. One thing we need to understand it, that nano emulsion and nano shaped polymers, they are entirely different. In emulsion, either we will have oil water emulsion or water oil, or oil water oil or water oil water. Fine. It means this emulsion will have tiny droplets in liquid phase. Again, I'm repeating, in nano emulsion, the active compound will be encapsulated, but it will be in liquid phase. If you will dry it, the aqueous part may evaporate, but oil will remain and the active ingredient. That time, once the aqueous part will evaporate, the encapsulation system means the droplet will break. Okay, so drying of nano emulsion is quite difficult. Fine, but what if you will encapsulate this whole droplet of, means whole nano emulsion droplet into a polymer, and then you can dry this polymer, because polymer is the shell part. Shell means the outer part. You can dry it. So that time this will be, the system will be nano shaped polymer. The technique of this can be electrospray, and electrospray nanofibers can be the example. Similarly, if it comes to drying, we can dry this with spray dryer. Means make the nano emulsion, mix with the polymer, and give it to the spray dryer. The powders can be in the nano shaped powder if the spray dryer system will have that specificity, which means if the spray dryer system having ultrasound at near to the nozzle, then the powder could be the nano powders. Similarly, the example is nanoliposomes, nanocomposites, means you can make composite of organic and inorganic. What I have given the example of Ayurvedic drugs or herbal drugs, means conjugate the herbal compound, conjugate the active compound over any nano shaped material, that can be quantum dot. So if you are conjugating two or different types of nanomaterials, they are nano composite. Quantum dots, carbon nanotubes, dendrimers are many other examples. And obviously, if we are talking again about the drug delivery, then it can be oral, ocular, intravenous, nasal, or topical. One trick I would like to share here, if you want to go for dermal delivery, you may want gel or you may want patches. You may want gel for the dermal delivery or you may want patches. So if you want dermal delivery, if you want to deliver any drug through dermal route, then you may go for emulsion or nano-shaped polymers. And if you want to go for polymers, electrospray is the best example. Electrospinning is the best example to make the patches for dermal delivery. Now, nanomedicine, I have already talked about different types of nanomaterials. We can play with the size. You may tune the same nanomaterial size and the activity could be different, because activity is size dependent, activity is shape dependent. Why it is so? Because the material, if it is having, let us say, rod shaped, if the material is having rod shaped and this is the cell, it might not cross the cell, but if it is going vertically, it might cross. So again, shape matters a lot. If this is rod shape and here is the membrane over it, so it might not cross this membrane. So this orientation of the shape matters for delivery of the active compound or delivery of the nanomaterial. So size and shape matters a lot if we want to work on drug delivery or nutraceutical delivery. And then again, you can play with the surface. You can again give charge over the surface. You can add a functional group over the surface. You can again bind a targeted ligand over the surface for targeted delivery. You can give any other type of coating which is solving your problem. So here you can imagine you should have the knowledge of biology it, so that you can decide what type of surface is required. You should have the knowledge of material so that you can synthesize the material, you can play with shape and size. And then you should have the knowledge of, again, the cell biology or microbiology or whatever the system you want to deliver the drug. So nanomedicine is highly interdisciplinary. Now, advantage, obviously, we all know that the solubility and stability of the drug can be improved using nanotechnology. It is giving efficient delivery system. It is giving targeted delivery system. It is giving even sustained release if we can coat with the polymers. So again, this delivery system can be, tuned with the nanomaterials. It is improving the bioavailability because nano is a smaller, so it can penetrate. If it is emulsion, the droplets can go inside the cell and it can give the activity. So it is improving the bioavailability. It is improving the or altering the. I'm not saying always improving because it is altering the pharmacokinetics. It means if you will give the coating of such type of polymer which is used for slow release, then it can slow down the pharmacokinetics. If you will giving the coating or such type, you are using such type of material which is giving the faster dissolution, so the pharmacokinetics can be increased. So it is actually altering the pharmacokinetics and extending the half-life of the drug. It is obviously used for targeted drug delivery. I already have discussed. It is lowering the means you may lower the drug dose instead of 100 mg, which is required, which is actually you are taking, and out of 100 mg, 90 mg is going towards the clearance route and is coming out of the body, and only 10 mg is getting utilized for actual pharmacodynamics. So using the nanomedicine means using the nanotechnology, you can lower down the dose so that the rest of the amount which is going to the clearance system and becoming the waste can be saved. The second thing, the extra drug which you are taking for the bioactivity, which is again hampering your clearance system, the organs involved in clearance, liver, kidney, major organs involved in clearance. So you can save them. I'll show few of the examples where we have worked on liver and kidneys. We have worked on animal model and how nanomaterial is actually hampering them. So mitigation, metabolism, and drug-drug interaction can be altered, and you can reduce the toxicity. This, how we can do that? One very good example is coating. Suppose this nanomaterial is toxic. This we are using to deliver some drug because of its charge or whatever. But you want it to be get cleared out from the body. You don't want it to be get accumulated in your body. So you may coat this whole system so that first this coating will get dissolved and then it will reach to the wherever the organelles you want. It will deliver the drug, and through the means it will deliver the drug, and through the blood it will go for the clearance route. So this again matters a lot for which system you are designing, where you have to deliver the drug. You can reduce the toxicity, obviously, but you should know where you want to deliver the drug. Now, the question of good or bad. Previous slides we have talked about in very layman language. We have discussed about the good part. Means obviously nanomedicine can do this, can do that. But do you think nanomedicine is always positive? Don't you think that nanomedicine is causing the oxidative stress? The same compounds is causing the nanomaterials are causing the inflammatory responses, are causing the genotoxicity, are causing the dysfunctioning the organelles, are responsible to lower down the cell signals. They are responsible for cytotoxicity. they are responsible for nano ecotoxicity. They are toxic for microbes. Can't it be possible? Have we checked that? So the question of good or bad always exists for nanomedicine because we have limited data. Till now, we have not explored much so that we can say very, very confidently that this nanomaterial is safer. To prove it, we need to have extensive nanotoxicology based analysis. And even if we are doing, let's say, if we are doing the toxicity analysis, detailed toxicity analysis for spherical, then what about the triangular shaped? What about the rod shaped? And if we are doing the means if we have our toxicology data for all, hello, someone's mic is on. Yeah, I'm sorry. So if we are doing this analysis, toxicological analysis for different shapes, then even if this spherical shape can be synthesized with different approach, changing the compounds. Let's take the example of silver nanoparticle. Silver nanoparticle, which reducing agent you are taking can also decide the toxicity. Let's say if you are taking the plant extract, that is a strong reducing agent, then the plant active compound will go and bind to that silver nanoparticle, which is also responsible for toxicity. Means, or either it will make the same toxic silver nanoparticle as safer. So it may alter which capping agent is on the surface also decides the toxicity. So we should have a range of toxicological evaluation which should be dependent upon the synthesis protocol, which should be shape dependent, which should be size dependent. And then we should be type of nanomaterial dependent. So this exhaust data means this detailed data we need for means to say it very confidently that this particular nanomaterial is safe for medicine. Now, this is actually complex diagram of toxicity, so I'll not be describing it. Rather, I'll show a few of the diagrams of my own research, which will be enable you to understand these diagrams. So now, one very good general question I have we worked on life cycle assessment of nanomaterials? What is life cycle assessment? In a layman terms, I can tell you that right from the synthesis, it means right from the raw material, starting from the raw material used till end of life. It means, what is end of life? Let's take the example of bottle. We are using the bottle. We are throwing it into the dustbin. And from dustbin, it is going to somewhere. Then again, the same plastic is getting reused. It means that is not end of life. The same bottle's plastic life is not end once after we are throwing it. The same plastic is getting reused. Then again, it is getting discarded. So how many times it can be recycled? How many times it can be reused? And at the end, where it is going? So in terms of nanomaterials, have we done this life cycle assessment? I doubt, because even I also don't have answer for this life cycle assessment. Once after one round of application in nanomedicine, or once after first exposure of nanomedicine, where these nanomaterials are accumulating. So being a ecotoxicological perspective, I can say that in the long run, once we will start manufacturing the nanomaterials at industrial scale, the same polymers, the same heavy metals will get accumulated over some ecosystem. It might be the what aqueous ecosystem, it might be the soil. It will get accumulated somewhere, and then it may harm our either the plants or means flora, fauna, anything. So that is again the question of future. So have we analyzed this such type of, should we have assessment of such life cycle analysis? Obviously we should. Now, obviously, if you will talk about nanotoxicity, then what are the data gap? We have very few standard protocol for studying this nanotoxicity. If I'll ask you, what are the protocols you are following for nanotoxicological evaluation for silver nanoparticle, you can say, I'm going for cell cytotoxicity, I'm going for genotoxicity, fine. Then what system and what protocol you are using for titanium dioxide? What system and what protocol you are using for gold? What system and what protocol you are using for conjugated? Because obviously the suspension and dissolution of nanomaterials varies. The dose of nanomaterials will vary. If we are talking about only silver, then it will vary with shape, size, synthesis protocol. So very few standard methods are there for nanotoxicological evaluation, and that should be developed. Lack of risk communication. We have not communicated much about the risk. We have communicated about the positive aspects of nanotechnology. We have never, means we have very least talked about the risk communication. Means what is the risk? Lack of life cycle assessment, as I have described in the previous slide. Unknown exposure to general public. Let's suppose nowadays, in few of the materials, I'll not take name because many industries are producing it. Few of the materials, we can see that, okay, majorly the cosmetics, they have written that nano-sized titanium dioxide is there. So have they studied that once after this nano titania, if it is not getting adsorbed in the skin, then where it is going? How the general public is getting exposed with the nanomaterial? The person who is using, he or she is getting exposed. But what after that? From this dermis, where it is going? So this unknown exposure is still a question. We have very few useful safety data sheets. We have safety data sheets for n number of bulk materials. But considering the silver nanomaterial, have you ever seen the guidelines, which is called the material safety data sheet in scientific terms? Have we ever seen the MSDS for every nanomaterial? And how it is varying from one nanomaterial to one nanomaterial? Have we ever seen? I have not. The commercial engineered nanomaterial may contain the impurities, endotoxins, etc. Obviously, because it is at commercial level, and how impurities are coming, that means if we are talking about impurities, then I think you guys are aware that even in the plastic bottles, the plastic is getting leached out. So if we are keeping our nano emulsion in a plastic bottle, have we studied the leaching of the plastic? So this data is also lacking. The commercial means how the commercial, it may contain the impurities, and this impurities contain or endotoxin content is still lacking. It has to be studied. We have little information about environmental faith and transport, obviously, because whatever we are talking, we have lack of published negative data. I'm working on nanomaterial, and if I have negative data about it, if it is not showing the functions in my lab, I have pressure of getting it patented or getting it published. I'm not reporting the negative data. I'm just showing the positive data. I may keep it in my record, but fine, I'm not publishing it. So such negative data, some toxicological data or non-performance of the nanomaterials data is lacking. We have poor reproducibility of published data. This is actually a fact. The reproducibility of the published data, why it is poor? Because if I am synthesizing any nanomaterial in my laboratory, the lab condition, the equipment condition, the glassware condition varies from lab to lab. So the reproducibility with exact shape, size, So with exact same ratio of capping agent with the same protocol, it will vary. So if we are talking about nanomedicine, so such standard reproducibility should be there, that one can say, okay, fine, it will be uniformly synthesized if you will synthesize here in India or in other country. So we have poor reproducibility, and as a scientist, we should accept it. And obviously, if nanomaterial is getting synthesized at industrial scale, our workers are not aware of how to handle it. We have rarely seen any worker, the industrial scale worker, if they are talking about carbon nanotube exposure, although carbon nanotube is getting synthesized at industrial scale. We have little discussion on public health in this aspect. And these things should be considered. And this is the data gap and uncertainties with respect to the nanomedicine or nanomaterial, in fact. Now, I have digged a bit of literature, and as per my digging, means this is obviously 6 months back, I was working on it to dig out what are the guidelines. Even OECD have a very surface level of guideline, not in depth. They have not strictly banned, or they have not talked strict, they don't have drafted very strict guidelines or regulations for industry. Yeah, obviously they have suggestions that, okay, this should be safer, that could be safer. Fine, they have reports on that, they have evidences on that, but strict regulation is still lacking. It has to be considered. uh, in India, means nanomedicine and nanotoxicology, safe handling guidelines started coming, but still only at the suggestions level. The guidelines, the suggestions should be that accurate, that fine. It should be controlled way. Obviously, task force are there, and we are working on it. So these are few books on nanotoxicology. Let's move ahead with unsolved question in nanotoxicology. We have n number of nanomaterials. The question is, have the toxicity been explored for all these nanomaterials? You just go sit with Scopus or whatever the database you rely on, search n number of nanomaterials are there, search the toxicity data. Not on microbiology, because obviously everyone will work on actually in vivo system. You will find lesser. Then, do we have studied the impact of physiochemical property and surface chemistry on nanotoxicity? The surface chemistry means obviously if it is conjugated, if it is capped with the reducing agent, how much ratio, changing the ratio of capping agents may vary the toxicity. The route of administration may vary the toxicity. The physiochemical property may varies the toxicity. Have you studied all these things? Obviously, we don't have standard nanotoxicity data for all the nanomaterials. Do we have a standard in silico nanotoxicological evaluation protocols? If we are going ahead with the bioinformatics approach, do we have bioinformatics approach for toxicity analysis? We have bioinformatics approach for drug discovery. The softwares are well developed. Why not nanotoxicology? What are the challenges in that? Do we have societal nanoethics? Suppose in my family, people are using nanomedicine-based cosmetics products. Do we have knowledge about the nanoethics in that? The effect of route of exposure of nanotoxicity, the same material, if it has been eaten, if it has gone to eyes, if it has on dermal exposure. So route of exposure on nanotoxicity, the impact, the influence of test model selection on nanotoxicity, the conventional toxicity evaluation protocol, is it enough for toxicological evaluation? Whatever the conventional toxicity evaluation protocol we have, is it enough? Have we examined that the genomic approach for nanotoxicity, it is still like very least information about these questions we have. The safety regulations, the LD50, the safe upper limit. Do we have suggestions for every nanomaterial? The dose regulation as per age, as per sex, as per region, as per the means obviously country to country the temperature and environment varies. So do we have those regulations as per age, sex, region, etc.? No. Talking about nanotoxicity, we have similar questions. We have very least analyzed on life cycle. We have very least analyzed the impact of nanomaterial on different ecosystem. Similar challenges are there on nano ecotoxicity as well. Now, obviously, why I'm talking about nanotoxicity? Because the more aware we will be, the translational aspect we will understand in more ethical manner. Obviously, nano has its own perspective, it has its own advantage. But the negative perspective also should be touched, should be considered. If we are working on translational research, if we are saying that, okay, fine, my research will be translated as product, then the negative perspective also should be studied, should be dealt. Now, again, coming to the, since environment was there, so toxicity I talked. Now, coming to the positive aspects of nanotechnology, obviously, since it is toxic to cells, it is toxic for cancer cells as well, and that is the game. You may deliver those nanomaterials, targeted delivery for cancer cells, and that's all. So, I'll show you a very good example. Here, just see these 4 pictures. Forget about X, Y, Z, whatever the technical terms written. Just don't see this. Just see these 4 pictures. In this picture, the lower one, the mice rat is showing the tumor of some size. The anti-cancerous drugs without nanomaterial has been given. The tumor size has been reduced. The anti-cancerous drugs with untargeted nanoparticles, it means randomly it has been conjugated over the nanomaterial, but it is on untargeted nanoparticles. The tumor size has been, means the drug activity was even more efficient. Now, giving the same anti-cancerous drug with the targeted nanoparticle has reduced the tumor size very significantly, and we can say that it has cured the tumor. So, if we are using the if we are considering the toxic aspect of nanoparticle, then for targeted drug delivery, curing the cancer-like disease is quite possible. But we should go for targeted delivery. Obviously, untargeted nanoparticle will have impact, but will not have such impact. Why so? Why I'm talking about targeted should be considered more and irrespective of untargeted? Is it only because of the bioactivity? No. Obviously, these untargeted nanoparticles, they are randomly getting distributed throughout. And that's the reason it is not very active here over the tumor. For targeted drug delivery, the random distribution is lesser, and they are very much targeted over the tumor and they are curing it. So that's the reason. If they are distributed throughout the body, they may get accumulated in some of the clearance route. I'll show you the data where it may get accumulated. Now, again, since our topic is health science and we have approximately 45 minutes, so we'll be talking a bit faster. That was the example of nanoparticle. Here is another example of nanomaterial. Like, let's consider a mesh. Let's consider a mesh which has to be used for hernia disease. In hernia disease, if mesh is getting used, then the surface which is exposed towards the hernia should be coated with drug. But the other side of the surface, the back side of this surface, which is not exposed towards hernia, but it is exposed towards the endodermis, should not be coated with the drug, because if we will coat to the both side, this drug may have negative impact on endodermis. So one-sided coating over the mesh. Mesh is porous, so the drug coating, if we may spray any of the liquid over it, it may slip and go to other side. At that time, electrospray is the technique which could be useful to coat the drug, and actually we have performed in our lab, so I'm very much sure that it will be useful. So to coat the drug one-sided, we can see it to the other side, the drug coating is not at all found. So here the polymeric nanomaterial, we can play with the polymeric nanomaterial, we can spray it over the mesh, and we can give it a one-sided coating of the encapsulated drug. Now again, giving the example of nanopharmaceuticals, actually, you might be aware of oral strips. So I have been involved in a project where we have to develop the oral strip loaded with the drug. It means it's thinner than the chewing gum, whatever we have, and it has to be kept over the tongue so that it will dissolve faster. So this is again some formulation. So for this, so using the electrospray and electrospinning, we can have a mat of such oral, we can develop the oral strips. Since we are using electrospinning, so the nanofibers are in means the fiber nano range. Since it is in nano range, so dissolution will be more faster. Since the dissolution will be faster, so the delivery of drug will be faster. It means the moment the patient is keeping this strip on his tongue, the drug will be delivered. He need not wait for it. So such type of strips are useful for fast delivery or quick delivery of the drug, which can be tuned with the thickness of this fiber, and drug loading can be tuned of running the electrospinning process for the more time. So that time, again, either you are playing with the spray or spinning, you should have knowledge of polymer. You should have knowledge of chemistry of this drug and polymer interaction. Now, again, this is actually a very good example of nanopharmaceutical delivery with emulsion. In our lab, we have synthesized the emulsion of vitamin D, E, and A. Then we have analyzed this emulsion in simulated gastrointestinal system. In simulated gastrointestinal system means we have to prepare a gastrointestinal system like, means the gastrointestinal system like, it should resemble the same condition, the pH, the biochemical, the enzymes, so of the stomach, of a small intestine, of ascending transverse and descending large intestine, and of pancreatic juice, we have to add in the smaller intestine. And then we can analyze the delivery of this nano emulsion in these systems where it is getting delivered. Obviously, you can use your LC or LCMS process to analyze where it is getting delivered. So that is again part of characterization and analytical techniques. Means that I'm least bothered about that. So you can actually, and you can be able to analyze where your drug will get delivered. This part, this is the same image of a nano emulsion where we can clearly see the vitamins are in the core and a very thin black coating it has. It means this black coating is nothing but the encapsulation. The vitamin is getting in, the vitamins compound are getting encapsulated in oil and water emulsion. So it is very clearly, it is visible with TEM images. Now we have the nano emulsion in our hand, so we have a number of applications. If it is getting delivered in the colon, then we can use for any disease which is responsible for, which is getting happened in colon. So this is again, you can play with the, you can play with this manufacturing part. You can play with the systems, the polymers. It means you can engineer your own nano vehicle to deliver the drug. Now, since means I can't show the full result. Papers are published. If you are interested, you can go. But again, one antimicrobial image I would like to show you. So these are the microbes which are with untreated nanoemulsion. These microbes, once after getting treated with this nanoemulsion, see the condition of microbes. The microbial culture, the cells, means the membrane, cell membrane is completely ruptured. So this emulsion is as strong as for antimicrobial activity as well. So obviously nano has its own advantage. Now this is again one of the project in which I was involved in, that was funded by Dr. Reddy's. So here we have to prepare the nano emulsion. We have to prepare the nano emulsion. Then we have to homogenize it with polymer, and these nano emulsion we have to mix with some polymer. Okay, I might not disclose everything. I'm sorry. Yeah, I might not disclose everything. That is my limitation. And then we have to spray dry it into the nano range. Either you can use a spray dryer or you can use electro spray. That is the part of drying technology. It means the concept of chemical engineering here. The only thing which I'm trying to say,
Hello, Shivandu. Hello, Shivandu. Can you hear me?
particularly for the students, chemical and then the knowledge of.
Hello. Can you hear me, Shivandu?
Yeah, I can. Can you hear me?
Yeah, it is clear now.
So till where it was audible means, shall I repeat it again?
Yeah, just in the last slide, you can repeat it again.
Okay, so probably this one.
Yeah, you can share your screen, but
Okay, I have to share again, no? Just wait here. I'm sorry for the interruption.
yeah, no problem.
Yeah. So from here, I should repeat?
Yes, it is clear now.
Yeah. So probably I believe till here we are.
Yeah, till the preparation of a nano emulsion and
Yeah.
to the spray dryer also, it was clear.
It was clear, right? Okay.
Yeah.
So once after the means again, what I want to say is that the nanomedicine term is actually highly interdisciplinary, because if spray drying system is coming, it is the concept of chemical engineering. Electrospray is the concept of chemical engineering. Polymer and other chemistry interaction part is the concept of chemistry. And then after synthesizing, after engineering the nano material, then comes the concept of biology. So if one want to work in nanomedicine or nanopharmaceutical or nanonutraceutical, they have to have a very broad perspective to work in interdisciplinary interdisciplinary manner. Now, again, these are a few of the systems. So overall, nano emulsion, why we have chosen, irrespective of heavy metal nanomaterial, because of the heavy metal nanomaterial's toxicity. Obviously, in emulsion phase, we are using the least toxic, materials, and then we can encapsulate it, and the activity of this emulsion droplets are better. But the major challenges in emulsion could be the recipe and process optimization. Obviously, since it is liquid, and if you want to deliver in the large intestine, so you might not able to achieve it. Because it is liquid, so it has to cross the stomach. So that is the major challenge to optimize the recipe and process. The major challenge of wall is to core encapsulation, and how much the strength of core should be, how much the strength of wall should be, where it should get dissolved so that the core part of this emulsion will come out. So again, you have to decrease the water activity with the emulsion, because if you will decrease the water activity, the shelf life of the whole system will increase. There will be lesser microbial contamination, because lesser the water activity, it means in easier terms, the more dried system is, the least chance of microbial attack will be there. It means microbial contamination will be there. Now, again, since I have to discuss a lot of data and I have 30 minutes only, fine. So now coming to cancer nanotechnology, we have worked on heavy metal toxicity on cancer again. So we have synthesized silver and titanium dioxide nanoparticle, and we have seen the toxicity means the lipid peroxidation, that is the result of reactive oxygen species generation. Due to this ROS generation and means that is oxidative stress, the glutathione concentration is getting reduced, and the DNA damage and the cell cycle arrest has been observed, which is the major cause for apoptosis. Now, one thing I would like to say, there is a difference between apoptosis and necrosis, obviously. So for this one particular nanomaterial might cause apoptosis, but the n number of literatures are there. Similar nanomaterials are also factor for either necrosis or early apoptosis. It means changing the synthesis protocol, change in the size and shape of the nanomaterial can alter the program, means can alter the cell death. It can lead to necrosis or it can lead to apoptosis. So we have to analyze it, and then we have to establish the fact which should be reproducible in others' lab as well. Similarly, we have analyzed this cancer, the anti-cancerous activity of nanomaterial on cinnamon nanoemulsion and silver nanoparticles. Obviously, the study was pathway-based study, so the data is well available in the published work of mine. So you can go ahead with that. But the good thing which we have seen is these nanomaterials are more efficient for their anti-cancerous activity as compared to the existing drug. We have taken a standard drug and it was more efficient. So one chapter of this nanomaterial is the positive aspect. The other chapter of nanotoxicology, which we have studied on animal. Over the in vivo In our in vivo nanotoxicological analysis on silver and titanium dioxide nanoparticle, we have studied the physiological and behavioral changes, obviously, then hematological, biochemical, enzymatic analysis, and histopathology. I'll show you the histopathology result, and we were shocked to see that nanomaterials, only nanomaterials, are causing accumulation and alteration in the cells of lungs and liver. And they are the major organ. Also, it was altering the cells of kidney. If we will see it very minutely, liver and kidney are related to clearance organs. Means clearance is actually due to the liver and kidney. So the cells are getting, means the nanomaterials are getting accumulated in these organs. So obviously they are altering the activity, which was evident with the biochemical analysis and hematology. If we will see the lungs, then again, blood is getting passed again and again through the lungs, and probably that's the reason lungs are also getting hampered. And nanomaterials are getting accumulated in lungs. Now we try to understand, is it only nanomaterial which is responsible for toxicity? Or in the real ecosystem of blood, some other protein or conjugate means getting absorbed? We try to understand, because obviously once we will inject any heavy metal nanomaterial in our body, or it is going to the blood, the first thing which it has to encounter are the biomolecules. That biomolecules, majorly it will be protein, if we will consider the blood. So we try to understand the interaction in that, and we were shocked to see that the titanium dioxide nanomaterial was actually causing the structural changes, irrespective of silver nanomaterial. Silver nanomaterial was also means altering the structure, but not as wilder as the titanium dioxide nanomaterial, which was obviously, it was evident with fluorescent spectroscopy, DLS, FTIR, circular dichroism. But the data is showing titanium is actually hampering the structure of the protein. So if it is altering the structure of the protein, it is altering the, I'm sorry. So now, biomolecule nanoparticle means, since I had the extended interest in silico, so we tried to understand this biomolecule nanoparticle interaction in silico way. The major challenge which we have faced in nanobioinformatics part was the PDB file for nanomaterial. It was the study has started in 2013. That time means 5 years, 6 years back, the PDB files for nanoparticle was not there. Till now, it is least available. So fortunately, University of Sydney, based on the XRD data, have generated the PDB file of nanomaterial. Then we tried to dock this nanoparticle with different cellular proteins. Obviously, the selection of the cellular proteins was based on if it has been studied earlier. So those proteins which has been studied earlier in wet lab experimentation, in other system which is based on wet lab, so we compared our in silico study with those data, and we were fortunate to see that even the in silico study also agrees with the fact which has been established in wet lab experimentation. It is very basic study, but the good part is a random docking data is showing the similar results which is getting performed in wet lab. It means nanobioinformatics. It is computational nanotechnology, and computational biotechnology has future, obviously. And if it will be developed, then standard nanoparticle biomolecule interaction, nanoparticle cell interaction could be studied in silico. So it has great future, but the process is still not optimized. It is not standardized. Then again, nano antimicrobials. One thing I would like to say to the students who are going through this presentation, obviously you are working on nano antimicrobials, and to microbes, if you'll give any nanoparticle, most of them will show the zone of inhibition. But I would like to suggest you don't perform this study of only zone of inhibition. Don't run behind the publication. Although try to go for some mechanistic approach, at least go a bit in depth. Go for the kinetics at least. You can analyze the growth kinetics, you can analyze the death kinetics, because if you are working on for zone of inhibition, whatever the agar plate need, the same if you remove from the agar, the broth system will required. So you don't need major amount of consumables. So at least try to understand the growth and death kinetics, which will give you idea how intense your nanomaterial is showing the activity. Then if you want to go more in depth, try to analyze the membrane permeability, try to analyze the membrane disintegration, how your membrane is getting disintegrated. It is obviously dye-based test. You have to use some fluorescent dye, but you can actually analyze it. So you can check actually your nanomaterial if it is disintegrating the membrane of the bacteria or not. You can check if the membrane is becoming leaky for bacteria or not. These things will give you idea about the toxicological reasons behind your nanomaterial. If you want to go more into deeper, you can go for reactive oxygen species generation for bacteria. You can treat your bacteria with nanomaterial, and after incubating for some time, you can use the DCFS2 DA dye or the ROS based dye, and you can analyze in fluorescent microscopy or fluorescent spectroscopy. Going into these way, you can actually explore the mechanism behind the antimicrobial activity. And the more you will explore in depth about the mechanism of antimicrobial activity, you will be more confident about your study, and means you can explore it more. The one thing I would also like to suggest, you can again use glutaraldehyde to fix the bacterial cells over the slide, and then you can see through SEM. After seeing for our one example I have given from n number of antimicrobial analysis we have performed for nanomaterials. So you can see the cells, it is ruptured after treatment. So in our lab, we have performed titanium dioxide, antimicrobial, silver, biogenic graphene oxide has been studied for toxicity. Nanosilica has also been studied for toxicity. So you can analyze it. Actually, nano antimicrobials, why it has future? Because we all are known about we all are known about antimicrobial resistance. The same strain which was actually not resistant for one antibacterial drug or antibiotic, the same strain has mutated and became resistant. So every day, new antimicrobial drug is required due to the resistance they are developing. In that perspective, nano could be the better approach. Either you can conjugate it, either you can encapsulate it, either you can use polymers, but nano could be better approach because it can penetrate to the cells and it can kill the cells, not because of genotoxicity, toxicity, but rupturing the membrane and generating the reactive oxygen species. For rupturing the membrane, generating the reactive oxygen species, for this particular mechanism of killing, the mutation will be rare. So you can have a very strong antimicrobials if you can go for nano antimicrobials. Now, I have also explored few of the part of environmental nanotechnology in depth. But before describing this, I would like to show one of the process, which I'm taking the name from the beginning, electrospinning, electrospraying. So I would like to just describe it. So suppose you will pump any polymer under high voltage. The voltage is higher. So suppose if you pump any polymer under high voltage, then at that nozzle, a Taylor cone will be formed and the polymer will get stretched. So due to this stretching, the energy will be higher and the solvent of the polymer will get evaporated at this point near to the Taylor cone. And the dried fiber can be collected. Now, the same thing can be used to prepare a mat. Let's consider a textile. So textile, every thread, if you will consider as nanofibers, a woven nanofibers, if you can consider, so it can be synthesized using electrospinning, fine. But obviously you will have few challenges over it. You have to overcome it. The challenges will be the spinning and then adhering one of the fiber on the another so that you can sandwich it. So these are the challenges. If you start working on it, you can overcome it. You can again analyze. Then after we in our lab we were trying to engineer a fabric for efficient filtration, which should be used in face mask. Then you have to actually analyze the pressure difference, the filtration efficiency. Those who are working on filtration, they can easily understand. So you can create such systems where you can keep your filter and you can analyze the pressure difference. You can analyze the filtration efficiency, because you can create a mist over here and then you can check the difference between the particulate matter after filtration and before filtration. To meet this, since our this is one of the patent on multi-nozzle, means we have applied for the patent. So, but the time is actually lesser, so I would just skip this because I like to show a few of more slides for students particularly. We will discuss, maybe you can mail me. So we have also worked on environmental nanotechnology to remediate heavy metal or dye or pharmaceutical waste. So let's consider, suppose we have a nanofiber or the mat. So the same fiber, since it is in nano range, so in lesser the area, we can keep more fibers. So we will have more surface area where the impurities can be adsorbed, and that's the concept. So you can engineer the nanocomposite. Obviously, you can use you can charge it, you can give charge to it, you can put anything on the fiber so that it will attract the impurity from the water. So this thing you can play over your knowledge of the chemistry. So either you can remediate the arsenic, you can remediate the chromium, the pharmaceutical waste, or whatever you want to remediate. So in this way, you can actually play with your knowledge of chemistry in environmental system. In University of Johannesburg, we are working majorly on food nanotechnology, which is an food packaging. Then we are working on 3D bioprinting. We are working on nanofibers for wound healing. We are working on hydrogel preparation. We are working on anti-diabetic activity, efficient nano powders for anti-diabetic activity. So these are few of the products which I have like either I was a part of the team or I have taken the lead in to perform the research at the lab scale. This face mask, SOSA, is actually means Prime Minister Narendra Modi wore at the Bhumi Pujan time in Ayodhya. So the membrane in the lab scale, I have taken the lead to perform the initial research for this particular face mask membrane. And I'm happy to see this product in market now. Then drug encapsulated hernia mesh, I already have told you. Placebo and nanofiber coated drug, this also I have discussed with you. And capillary multi-nozzle, which is again, I'll show you some other time. So, and model drug for Dr. Reddy's project, this project also has been discussed. So overall, what I would like to say that you can, the same nanotechnology knowledge, you can just translate it into the product. And these are few of the authored and edited book in nanomedicine and nanotoxicology. These are few books, and actually these are 3 authored books which I have contracted, and this one is published, which is on nano food. This is a nano food. This is again edited book on nano food and nano agriculture. This is on environmental nanotechnology. You can read this. These are the 5 volumes of books. On materials for biotechnology, this is a very basic book on which covers the synthesis part. You can refer to it if you want. This challenging book I would like to discuss again with you. There is a difference between bio-nanotechnology and nanobiotechnology. The very minute difference which we used to get confused. Nanobiotechnology means the application of nanomaterials in biotechnology or in biology. Again, nanobiotechnology means the application of nanotechnology in biology. But bio-nanotechnology means the nano-sized materials present in biological system, which are already present. So studying them is bio-nanotechnology. One very good example is flagella. So this is actually a challenging book, and because bio-nanoscience and bio-nanotechnology is least explored, I'm getting challenged also to complete this book. And yeah, so don't get confused. These are few of the industrial collaborators, the international collaborators, the Indian collaborators with whom I'm working on. So yeah, a lot more to learn and a lot more to achieve. You can always write to me on my Johannesburg email ID, which has been mentioned here.
Thank you, Dr. Shivandu, for the wonderful session to give a lot of insights on toxicological approaches of nanotechnology. And so far, in many conferences and many lectures, whenever some experts are talking about nanotechnology, obviously the questions comes from the participants on towards toxicological approach. So as you rightly pointed out, we need to work on those nanotoxicology to improve the database first. Then we can able to understand much into it. Thanks for your wonderful session. And there are 10 to 15 questions are there. I will group it and then I will ask if you want. Okay. And what are all the basic analytical techniques used to find the toxicity of any material?
Toxicity, if you want to analyze in silico, then obviously at this scenario, you should go for simulations and QSAR studies as well as docking. If you want to analyze the toxicity in terms of microbial toxicity, then you should go for obviously right from zone of inhibition, growth, death kinetics, then reactive oxygen species, and other genotoxicity in microbes. If you want to study the cytotoxicological evaluation, then fluorescent dye is there. So with that, you can actually analyze the genotoxicity or apoptotic or necrosis or cell arrest in the cell line, which phase it is getting arrested with the flow cytometry. If you want to go for flow like pathway based, then you can go for immunoblot or Western blot. And in vivo, obviously, histopathology and whatever we have discussed. So these are the techniques which is actually I used for, means I am using it for toxicological evaluation.
And which guidelines are available with respect to toxicity studies in animal model other than in vitro, in specific to nanoparticles? Is there any?
You can refer the 10 guidelines, whatever I have shown for OECD. So that guideline you can refer in terms of in vivo. They have mentioned in vivo, but obviously, as I told, strict regulations are not there. Guidelines and suggestions you can go for OECD, but they are like there also you will find that some gaps are there.
Okay, yeah. And there was a question from a research student. What are all the suggestions you want to give to a research student to find the problem and to trace it? At during this lockdown time, at what step we can initiate to learn something about this?
See, means many from my family also are doing means PhD. One of my cousin is in IIT Kharagpur. He is doing PhD. So in lockdown time, how I suggested my brother to utilize the time, I'll share the same with you. You can like obviously you might have registered and you might have selected the guide. So what I would like to suggest that give more and more work not only on reading but to identify the problem. It means if you're working, let's say, on translational aspect of nanotechnology, then draft each and every experiment, then write the protocols, everything on your notebook, obviously, and be very confident that once the lockdown will be over, I can finish this work at a stretch. So this way you can save the time, and another way is obviously writing review article with the guide. And if you are at the final year, you already have objective and you have that means if you have that means methods to go ahead, but lockdown is there due to which you are not able to work. So I would like to suggest that sit with your guide, start writing the post PhD work, because PhD you already have materialized what you want to work. So post PhD, it will save your time. After PhD, after thesis submission, you can straight move ahead with postdoc and all.
And what are all the ways to assess the efficacy or efficiency and toxicological parameters of a nano drug without using living model system? I think you have answered it earlier too. Through in silico approaches, we can do it.
No, not in silico, Dr. Padmanabhan. Actually, I would like to say simulated gastrointestinal tract would be the best approach, because this is what we have used. In your
Okay.
lab, you can simulate the GIT in beakers and all, and then you can say that okay, after being in means, and you can cross that right from the simulated oral system to stomach and all. Then you can say that after this much minute in small intestine or large intestine, it is getting released. So if you don't want to use in vivo system, you can always use the like simulated GIT.
Yeah. And there are a lot of metals and metal oxides which can form nanoparticles. So according to you, which one is more effective nanoparticle in all aspects?
This is actually means as I already told, synthesis protocol as
Yeah.
well as shape size matters a lot. So this question is still unclear to me.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, because each and every particle is unique in its own character and
yeah, and it will behave
properties.
uniquely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And how much years will take to discover nanomedicine or nano drug? What are all the tests done to study the toxicology in your project?
Uh, we used to analyze the cytotoxicity and then in vivo, what I have shown. And then next, we also used to analyze the nano ecotoxicology, which major of the researchers may not go for. So in which microbial ecosystem, in microbial ecosystem, bacteria, fungus, and all type of microbes comes, and then again try to go for assimilation perspective, whether it is getting settled in water or soil. So try to go for ecotoxicological perspective, so that you can say that at end of the moment after use, it will get accumulated in this particular ecosystem. Either it can be soil or aqueous.
Give some insights on nanoparticle based sensors for environmental application.
I have rarely worked on sensors because sensors need the knowledge of electronics, and I'm purely biotechnology guy. So I may not give much impact. Yeah, I may not give accurate answer for this.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Yeah.
Yeah, I can give answer from my side. Yeah, a lot of nanoparticle based sensors are there for environmental application. If you're working with paper based sensors, the retention of the micropollutants is taken care much by the absorption based nanoparticles. So those kind of things you can able to do it. Or if you are going ahead with the biological based sensors, the enzyme cofactors are there. So for dealing with those cofactors, we are laying on this nanoparticle based technology. So obviously, nanotechnology is having its wider applications in different dimensions, especially in environmental application towards sensors also. Yeah, I think
Thanks
we
for
are
answering,
done.
Dr. Padmanabhan.
Yeah, thank you.
uh,
I think one last question is there. Can you please elaborate which material you use for N95 mask? Can you give some more insights on COVID related aspects right now?
uh, you can use PAN or PS6.
Hmm.
Uh, that's the only hint I can give.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's all about the questions, Dr. Shivandu.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, the session was wonderful. You started from the scratch and you have extended to the uh, advanced level also. I think though this was intended to orient towards water-based research, I feel the toxicological approach towards nanoparticle is also a very important one that I believe in India it is not up to the mark. The regulatory aspects are not up to the mark. So I think you have addressed a very valid point and you gave a lot of insights about it. Thank you so much for your time, Dr. Shivandu.
Hello.
Thank
Hello,
you.
sir. I have. Hello.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I
yeah.
think
Yes, sir.
one person is having a
Sir, I
network.
have a question. So I would like to ask you personally that in between you just tell that there is a disadvantage that
Mhm.
that in nanoparticles there is a poor reproducibility of published data.
Hmm.
So is there any specific reason with nanomaterials or it is quite common with all other materials also?
No, I'm
To
not
re-
challenging. I'm not challenging that reproducibility is actually impossible. But obviously, since lab to lab condition, many things varies. So if we will consider lab to lab situation and environmental condition, the physiological condition, the purity of the reducing agent, even if you let's talk about silver nanoparticles. So even the purity of the reducing agent matters a lot. So in this way, if someone is using 99% and we are not using 99%, our reducing agent might be kept for longer time. So these things will vary the size shape of the nanomaterial.
Sir, but yes, sir, I got your point. But is there any specific reason specifically for nanomaterials, or because for other materials like macromaterials and other also, these reasons are same?
These results are same, no means, but again, even a minute difference will cause the change in shape and size. In other protocols, let's say we are working on plant extraction, fine. So if I'm extracting and purifying any active compound in my lab at 99%, someone may reach up to 98%. Their only percentage may vary. Here, size and shape will vary. So that will again have impact on bioactivity.
Yeah.
Okay, yes, I got it. Yeah,
Thank you.
thank you.
Thank you, Jatan Kumar Sharma. And thank you, Dr. Shivandu. Hope we will meet you soon after the
Thank you.
lockdown lifts.
Sure, obviously.
Thank you, participants. Stay safe. Yes, and with a small note, I would like to conclude the session. On September 17th, we are having another webinar from Professor Shane Snyder. He is from Nanyang Technological University, Singapore, and he is having a vast experience in ozonation-based technology in water treatment. And we are having his webinar on this 17th. Followed by him, we are having another presentation in 23rd by Professor Luigi Rizzo from University of Salerno, Italy. And thank you, participants, and thank you, Shivandu. Stay connected.
Yeah.
We will do good research for the society. Thank you.
Sure. Bye.
Yeah, thank you.